All right, let's go ahead and begin. Once again, welcome everyone to the Cal EVIP Alameda County Incentive Project pre-launch webinar. My name is Amy Slavinsky and I will be moderating today. Our speaker this morning is Fidel Leon Green from the Center for Sustainable Energy. And joining us for our Q&A session are Brian Fauble from California Energy Commission and Zach Thompson from East Bay Community Energy. Next slide, please. Before we get started, please note that you may submit questions for our panelists at any time during the presentation using the chat box feature. Also, because we are expecting high traffic, there is a possibility of some technical difficulties during the presentation. We apologize for any delays or compromised presentation quality. If you miss any part of the webinar, or if you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us at Alameda County CALeVIP at energycenter.org. The presentation will also be sent out to attendees by this Friday and will be available on the CEC docket later today. Next slide, please. On the agenda for today, Fidel will give some background on CALeVIP and then go into some details on the Alameda County Incentive Project. We will discuss eligibility and equipment requirements for the project, take a quick 5-minute break, and then go into the application process. We will wrap up with our question and answer session at the end. I'll now pass it over to Fidel to start the presentation. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Amy. To date, CALeVIP has launched 11 incentive projects covering more than 30 counties all over California. For each project, the goal is to implement a targeted incentive program that encourages relevant processes to become more streamlined and transform communities by enabling access to charging infrastructure. Next slide, please. CALeVIP is made possible by funds from the California Energy Commission's Clean Transportation Program, which was established in 2008 and in 2013 was extended through 2023 by California Assembly Bill 8. To date, nearly $200 million in funding from both the California Energy Commission and our regional partners have facilitated the installation of EV charging infrastructure both for level 2 and DC fast charging. Next slide, please. The upcoming Alameda County Incentive Project will provide incentives for both level 2 and DC fast chargers. Incentives will be available for most non-single family home uses and will be reserved on a first-come, first-served basis. Exceptions to the first-come, first-served policy will be made, if necessary, to meet minimum funding requirements for disadvantaged communities, low-income communities, and multi-unit dwelling hotspots. Applications will open on December 1st, 2021, between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., and will remain open once available. A shorter window of time will be announced prior to launch date. We'll continue going over the Alameda County Incentive Project in more detail, but you'll be able to find all of the relevant information and resources on the Alameda County Incentive Project landing page, which is linked on this slide and can be found on our website, calevip.org. Next slide, please. The Alameda County Incentive Project is presented in partnership with East Bay Community Energy. East Bay Community Energy, or EBCE, is a not-for-profit public agency formed by Alameda County and 11 of the Alameda County cities. EBCE is the default load-serving entity for Alameda County and procures electricity for residential, commercial, industrial, and public sector customers. Thanks to our collaboration with EBCE, the Alameda County Incentive Project will offer nearly $3 million in additional funding for level 2 chargers and will have a greater focus on multi-unit dwelling installations. Next slide, please. The Alameda County Incentive Project is a single county project. This means that the physical location of the installation must be located within the Alameda County boundaries to be eligible for incentives. Next slide, please. Before continuing, I'd like to go over some key definitions for the Alameda County Incentive Project. First is the term disadvantaged community. The disadvantaged community designation is based on the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessments CALenViroScreen 3.0 scores, which consider a variety of socioeconomic, health, and environmental factors. To be designated as a disadvantaged community, a census tract must be in the 75th percentile, or top 25% of all California census tracts. The link will take you to the CALenViroScreen 3.0 mapping tool, where you can view each California census tract's CALenViroScreen score. The next term is a low-income community. To be designated as a low-income community, a census tract must have a median income equal to or below 80% of the statewide median income. The link on the slide will take you to a mapping tool displaying all of the census tracts that meet this designation. Now moving on to a term that currently only applies to Alameda County geography, the MUD hotspot. An MUD hotspot is a square mile within Alameda County that has a higher density of multi-unit dwellings of 5 units or more than in other areas. The link on the slide will take you to a mapping tool created by ebce that displays the areas within Alameda County that meet this designation. I'll review this mapping tool in the next slide. The fourth term on this list is the active connector. In this incentive project, the number of active connectors is a characteristic of a DC fast charger and refers to the number of connectors that can concurrently supply the guaranteed max output at any one time. Finally, the guaranteed max output is also a characteristic of a DC fast charger and refers to the maximum power that can be provided per active connector when all connectors are in use. These 5 definitions are a few of the key definitions for the Alameda County Incentive Project. For a full list of definitions, please refer to the implementation manual, which can be found on the Alameda County Incentive Project landing page. Next slide, please. As I previously mentioned, the MUD Hotspot Interactive Map was created by ebce to help applicants determine whether their installation counts as an MUD hotspot. If you've used Google Maps before, this tool will be very intuitive to use. However, if you haven't used Google Maps before, this tool is still fairly simple to use. If you want to know whether a property falls within an MUD hotspot, you can move your cursor over to this red section and click on the magnifying glass. From there, you'll type in the street address for the property you're interested in and press enter. If the property is in the blue, you're in an MUD hotspot. Simple as that. The ebce team has also made sure that if the hotspot boundaries cross through a parcel, the entire parcel is included in the hotspot. So that is why many of the boundaries you'll see have these squiggly lines. You can access this map by clicking on the link below, the link on the previous slide, or the link on the Alameda County Incentive Project landing page. Next slide, please. Moving on to eligibility requirements for applicants. All applicants must either be the site owner or have prior authorization from the site owner to install EV charging stations. Applicants must be part of a business, nonprofit organization, California Native American tribe, be a public or government entity based in California, or operate as a California-based affiliate. Registration with the California Secretary of State is also required. Applicants are required to submit a signed site verification form, within 5 calendar days of application submittal. However, we strongly encourage all applicants to complete this form as soon as possible so that applicants can upload it shortly after submitting their application. Failure to submit a signed site verification form within 5 days of applying will result in an auto cancellation of your application. So please get your site verification form filled out ahead of time. Finally, to receive rebates funded by EBCE, applicants must be a customer of EBCE. Next slide, please. Funding for the Alameda County Incentive Project totals just over $17 million. $14.5 million from the California Energy Commission for both Level 2 and DC fast chargers, and just over $2.5 million from EBCE for Level 2 chargers. Remember that to access funding from EBCE, you must be one of their customers and will be required to provide your service account number. Half of all funding for each technology type will be allocated to disadvantaged communities and/or low-income community installations. Additionally, half of DCFC funding will be allocated to multi-unit dwelling hotspot applications. Next slide, please. Level 2 rebates for the Alameda County Incentive Project will be composed of 3 components: the base rebate, the disadvantaged community, low-income community, or affordable housing adder, and the multi-unit dwelling adder. The affordable housing adder is the new addition to Cali VIP. It was proposed by East Bay Community Energy along with the immunity hotspot requirement. The base rebate will provide the lesser of $3,500 per connector and 75% of project costs. Level 2 connectors installed in a disadvantaged community, low-income community, or affordable housing site will receive an additional $2,000. Additional $500. Level 2 connectors installed in a multi-unit dwelling site defined as 3 or more units within a structure will receive an additional $2,000. Note that all components can be stacked for a maximum rebate of $6,000 per Level 2 connector. Next slide, please. Now turning to DC fast chargers. The rebates for DC fast chargers are divided into 2 power level tiers: the 50 kilowatt to 100 kilowatt tier, which excludes 100 kilowatt chargers, and the 100 kilowatt and above tier. For the 50 kilowatt to 100 kilowatt tier, sites not located in a disadvantaged community or low-income community can receive up to $30,000 per active connector. Sites located in a disadvantaged community and/or low-income community can receive up to $40,000 per active connector. For the 100 kilowatt and above tier, sites not located in a disadvantaged community or low-income community can receive up to $60,000 per active connector, and sites located in a disadvantaged community and/or low-income community can receive up to $80,000 per active connector. Note that all final rebates are based on the guaranteed max output of the DC fast charger and are capped at 75% of the total project cost. Next slide, please. For those of you only looking to install DC fast chargers, you may receive a rebate for 1 to 6 active connectors. And for those of you only looking to install level 2 chargers, you may receive a rebate for 1 to 10 connectors. For combo applicants, you may receive a rebate for up to 6 DC fast charger active connectors and up to 4 level 2 connectors. Also note that you may install beyond these limits, but you will not receive rebates beyond these limits indicated on this slide. However, additional chargers beyond the rebated chargers, even if not listed on the Cali VIP eligible equipment list, can be installed and included in the total project cost, 75% of which can be covered by rebates. Next slide, please. So before going over more of the project details, we'd love to learn more about our live audience's plans for their installations. Please take a few seconds to answer our first poll question of the day. What type of EV charger are you interested in applying for? Okay, thank you all for your participation. It looks like we have a pretty even split between level 2 and DC fast charger installations, as well as combination applications. So I look forward to looking at all your applications once they come in. Next slide, please. So moving on to equipment requirements. All equipment must be new and installed on the site for the first time and must appear on the Alameda County eligible equipment list. The eligible equipment list is updated monthly as we are made aware of new equipment that meets the eligibility requirements. Also note that equipment on applications may be swapped like for like. This is especially important for DC fast chargers, as there will not be an other option for the DC fast charger category. So please review the linked Alameda County eligible equipment list and be ready to make a selection when filling out your application. To appear on the list, level 2 chargers must use the J1772 connector, and DC fast chargers must use either a CHAdeMO or a CCS connector on each dispenser. All chargers must be networked and be capable of remote start, remote diagnostics, and charging session data logging. Level 2 chargers must sign a networking agreement for a minimum of 2 years, and DC fast chargers must sign for a minimum of 5 years. Level 2 chargers must be capable of 6.2 kilowatts or greater per connector, and DC fast chargers must be capable of a guaranteed maximum output of 50 kilowatts or greater per active connector, with chargers capable of 100 kilowatts or greater eligible for a higher rebate. Level 2 chargers must be Energy Star certified, though this does not apply to DC fast chargers for this project. All chargers must accept at least 2 forms of payment and some form of credit card, be it on the dispenser, through an app, or a toll-free number. Note that beginning January 1st, 2022 and January 1st, 2023, all public-facing DC fast chargers and level 2 chargers, respectively, that require payment will be required by Senate Bill 454 to have EMV credit card readers, also known as chip readers, among other requirements. DC fast chargers and level 2 chargers installed before those dates must add credit card readers by July 1st, 2033 or when replaced. And finally, all chargers must be approved by a nationally recognized testing laboratory program. Next slide, please. So we've discussed active connectors at various points now, but how do we determine the number of active connectors a charger has? Well, take for example these 2 dual-port DC fast chargers. When idle, both the top and the bottom chargers can provide power through either connector. Once a vehicle comes in and plugs into the top charger, the other connector can no longer provide power. If another car drives up and wants to use this charger, then it must wait until the first car is done using the charger. This charger has 1 active connector because only 1 connector can be active at a time. On the other hand, the bottom charger can always provide power to both connectors, even when a car is charging from one of the connectors. A second car can drive up and charge from the other. This means that the bottom charger has 2 active connectors because 2 connectors can be active at a time. Next slide, please. Now let's look at the same scenario, but assign a max power output of 100 kilowatts to each charger. The top charger with 1 active connector only ever supplies power to a single connector at a time, meaning that it is guaranteed to always have a max power output of 100 kilowatts. Thus, its guaranteed max output is 100 kilowatts. However, The bottom charger has 2 active connectors and does share power between its connectors, meaning that when all its active connectors are in use, its maximum power output is split into 2, so each connector can only guarantee to always have a max power output of 50 kilowatts. Thus, its guaranteed max output is 50 kilowatts. So to recap, both chargers have a maximum power output of 100 kilowatts. The top charger has one active connector with a guaranteed max output of 100 kilowatts, while the bottom charger has 2 active connectors, each one with a guaranteed max output of 50 kilowatts. Next slide, please. Now let's switch from equipment requirements to site requirements, specifically for DC fast chargers. All DC fast charger sites must be well lit, secure, and in compliance with all federal, state, and municipal laws, ordinances, rules, codes, standards, and regulations. All DC fast charger sites must be publicly accessible at all times, meaning that they cannot be in a gated area close to the public at any time. Additionally, the primary use of DC fast charger sites must be one that is listed on this slide. Next slide, please. In addition to the requirements from the previous slide, the DC fast charger connectors selected for incentives must meet the following requirements. There must be at least one CCS connector and one CHAdeMO connector in the group, and the number of CCS connectors in the group must equal or exceed the number of CHAdeMO connectors in the group. For example, if I install 3 CCS connectors and one CHAdeMO connector, all 4 connectors can be selected for incentives, since I have installed one of each connector and there are a greater amount of CCS connectors. Similarly, if I install 2 CCS connectors and 2 CHAdeMO connectors, all 4 connectors can be selected for incentives, since I have installed one of each connector and there are an equal amount of CCS connectors to CHAdeMO connectors. However, if I wish to install 1 CCS connector and 3 CHAdeMO connectors, I am free to do so, but only 1 CCS and 1 CHAdeMO connector can be selected for incentives. Otherwise, the requirement that the number of CCS connectors equal or exceed the quantity of CHAdeMO connectors will not be met. Next slide, please. All Level 2 sites must be well lit, secure, and in compliance with all federal, state, and municipal laws, ordinances, rules, codes, standards, and regulations. Level 2 sites must be shared use, meaning, for example, that a single charger is not dedicated to a single tenant in a multi-unit dwelling or a single employee at a workplace. However, it is not a requirement that they be publicly available. Primary site uses for Level 2 chargers are more expansive than for direct current fast chargers, but must fall into the categories listed on the slide. Note that curbside installations are allowed for Level 2 chargers as long as the installation happens on the same block as another eligible site type. Next slide, please. Okay, so it's time for our second poll question of the day. Since you've tuned into this webinar, we assume that you have an EV installation in mind. Please tell us what type of property you're wanting to install an EV charger. I'll give you a few seconds to answer. Okay, so it looks like the majority are planning to install at either a commercial site or a multi-unit dwelling. However, we do have a healthy balance of workplace and public facilities, as well as other site types. Thanks again for your participation. Next slide, please. Okay, now let's review the rebate cap limit. This rebate cap limit is on the dollar amount of active applications, which means that applications that are applications that are in a funds reserved status when the applicant is working on designing the project, procuring the equipment, making the installations, and commissioning the equipment. Once an application is completed and the rebate is paid out, then the funds associated with that application is removed from the applicant's dollar amount of active applications, and the applicant is then eligible to apply for more funds. The dollar amount of active applications is tracked using the applicant's tax identification number and is capped at $992,000 for the Alameda County Incentive Project. Next slide, please. Here is an example of how the rebate cap limit works. Say ABC Company files 3 applications in Alameda County. The applications are for $496,000, $256,000, and $240,000, and they add up to a total of $992,000, the rebate cap limit. ABC Company may submit additional applications, but none of the additional applications in Alameda County can have funds reserved until the dollar amount of its active applications in Alameda County drops below the rebate cap limit. This means that the company must finish the installation and receive the rebate for at least one of the projects to have additional funds reserved in Alameda County. Let's assume that ABC Company completes the requirements for the $256,000 application and receives the final rebate. This means that ABC Company's active applications in Alameda County now add up to $736,000. As a result, ABC Company can now apply for up to $256,000 in new applications in Alameda County, or can have funds reserved for any additional applications in Alameda County, adding up to $256,000. Next slide, please. So, what can the incentive funds be used for? Generally, funds can be used for any costs associated with the installation of the electric vehicle chargers, be it the electric vehicle supply equipment, the make-ready infrastructure, the labor and materials, installation costs, energy storage, or any of the other items listed on the slide. An important thing to note is that all these eligible costs can be incurred on or after October 1st, 2021. These costs are incurred at the applicant's own risk before the associated application funds are reserved. However, once funds are reserved, all incurred eligible costs can be covered with the final rebate, as long as the application meets all of the other requirements. Next slide, please. In contrast, these are the ineligible costs. Permit and inspection fees are, by law, ineligible to be rebated by Cali VIP. Any installation, materials, equipment, and other costs that are not related to the electric vehicle charger installation are not eligible to receive a rebate. Additionally, costs paid by other rebate or incentive program or projects are not eligible to receive a rebate. And finally, standalone solar panel costs are not eligible to receive a rebate because they are funded through other California Energy Commission programs.
All right. Next up, Fidel will walk through the application process and go over some important documentation and information you'll need for the project. Over to you, Fidel.
Thanks, Amy. Before starting an application, applicants will need to create an account at CALeVIP.org. Note that unique login credentials are required for each person submitting applications. Do not share login credentials with anyone else, even others at your company. CALeVIP does not allow submissions by bots or other automated processes. And CALeVIP reserves the right to cancel applications that use any method that could disadvantage other applicants. Applicants may create an account in advance, so just head to calivip.org/user/register, or from the main calivip.org page, you can click on the Login button in the upper right corner and then select Create New Account. Next slide, please. Before going through an example application, we want to provide you with a few application tips. First, we recommend reviewing the sample Alameda County Incentive Project application and ensuring that you have all the information you need to fill out your application on launch day. This sample application will be posted to the Alameda County Incentive Project landing page by next week. Our second tip is to avoid submitting multiple applications for a single installation site. One site, one application. In that single application, please submit the maximum number of chargers you are planning to install on the site. Again, one site, one application. Also, please note that if less funds are available for your project than you need, you should still submit your application. We will reach out to you if additional funds become available for your project. Next slide, please. To further assist you in gathering information for your application, we've put together this application checklist. The information on the checklist is grouped by who and what the information pertains to. Next slide, please. We've also included a list of the additional miscellaneous questions that we require to be answered. Hopefully this will be useful in making the application process as easy as possible for all of you. It will be available to you once we send out the slideshow presentation and will be available on the Cali VIP docket. Sorry, the CEC docket. Next slide, please. Okay, so once an applicant is logged in and has begun their application, the first step is to go through the process of selecting the equipment that will be installed. To do this, applicants must first identify the installation site type, which we capture here through the identification of the main use and the specific use of the installation site. As we previously discussed, the site type will determine which charging equipment applicants are eligible for, so you will not be able to select equipment until the site type has been identified. Remember that the site type is determined based on the primary use of the site that the chargers will be installed on. Next slide, please. After selecting the installation site type, applicants can select the make and model of the equipment, the number of connectors for the make and model, the quantity of make and model being installed, and the installation type. This means whether the charging infrastructure is new, whether the chargers are being installed on existing stub outs, or if the chargers are replacing older, non-network chargers or being installed on make-ready infrastructure. Note that for sites with multiple make and models being installed, applicants will need to make these selections for each make and model. After selecting the charging equipment, applicants must select a network provider. We recognize that the network provider may not be known at this time, and there is an option to indicate that. However, please remember that a network services contract will be required for each site before approval of any rebates. Next slide, please. So here is a snapshot of what the equipment selection looks like on the application. For DCFC, the rebates are awarded per active connector, which is a field that auto-populates. However, L2 rebates are based on the number of connectors per charger, which is a drop-down menu field. For this reason, DCFC and combo applicants will not have the option to select Other as a DCFC make model. So please be ready to make a DCFC selection that makes sense for your installation. Also note that it is required to check the box at the bottom of this section, where applicants wanting to receive DCFC rebates must commit to installing at least one CHAdeMO and one CCS connector on the site, and will commit to installing an equal or greater amount of CCS connectors than CHAdeMO connectors. Next slide, please. The next step is to review the terms and conditions of the incentive project. These outline the project requirements and can be found on the implementation manual link that is provided on this slide, as well as on the Alameda County Incentive Project landing page and the sample application. We highly encourage applicants to review the implementation manual and project requirements ahead of time. Example topics that are included in these requirements include the authority to apply for the site, the voluntary submittal of personally identifiable information that is provided on the application, and the consent for Cali VIP to share information. Once applicants have reviewed the terms and conditions, click Accept and Continue. Next slide, please. After agreeing to all project requirements, applicants must fill out the remaining information beginning with applicant organization questions. The applicant organization for Cali VIP is the entity that will be incurring the project costs and receiving the rebate, meaning that invoices and receipts for costs and payments will need to be under this entity's name. The applicant organization can be a variety of entities, ranging from businesses, public entities, nonprofits, etc. And this will need to be noted on the application. Applicants will also need to provide the applicant organization name and tax identification number, which should be clearly associated with one another. The applicant organization address will also need to be provided, as well as the applicant organization's relationship to the site, be it site owner, electric vehicle service provider, contractor, etc. Please make sure this information matches the information you have on record with the California Secretary of State, if this is applicable to you. Also note that most of the remaining questions in the application will need to be answered from the perspective of the applicant organization. Next slide, please. The next set of required information is answers to the following declarations, again answered from the perspective of the applicant organization. These declarations relate to bankruptcy, legal actions threatened or pending, loan defaults, and outstanding judgments. Next slide, please. The next section will ask information about the application manager, meaning the primary point of contact for the applicant organization. The application manager can be part of the applicant organization, but that is not required. In fact, many organizations choose to have a third party manage the application on their behalf. Basic name and phone number will need to be provided for this person. Next slide, please. The next category is the installation address. A very important note here is that the installation address cannot be updated after submission, so please pay extra attention to the installation address that you indicate on the application. We understand that some sites may have multiple addresses, but please identify the most accurate address for the installation location on the application and double check for accuracy before submission. At the bottom, you will see some of the required information for the address, which includes information such as the county and cross streets. Next slide, please. Additional questions related to the site will be asked, including identifying the business or organization that is physically closest to the chargers, whether the site is located on tribal land, affordable housing status for multi-unit dwelling sites, and public accessibility questions. Next slide, please. Some informative questions that will be asked for research purposes include if there is an existing need of chargers, and if so, who has that need? If a fee will be charged for the use of the chargers, who will own the chargers, who will operate the chargers, and information about how much parking exists on the site and how much of that will be dedicated to electric vehicle charging. Next slide, please. Continuing the research questions, we'd like to know who will be claiming the potential value of low carbon fuel standard credits generated by the electric vehicle charging stations. This will help us better understand how these credits are factoring into decisions around these installations. Next slide, please. And finally, we'll need to know which entity is providing power to the site. Remember that to receive ebce rebate funds, you must be an ebce customer. This is the section where you will provide that necessary information to us. Next slide, please. If you're unsure whether you're an ebce customer, first check whether you receive your energy bill from PG&E. If you don't, then you're probably not an ebce customer. If you do, then you'll want to check under your account summary for a line item that contains East Bay Community Energy in it. If you see it, then you're an ebce customer, and that account number in the top right is all we'll need to verify it. Just make sure you're looking at the energy bill for the installation site. Once you've completed this section, you'll have reached the end of the application and will be able to click on the Submit button. Next slide, please. After submitting your application, it will be assigned a unique application number, and you will be able to track its progress in your application dashboard. This is also where you'll submit your documents, starting with the site verification form. Uploading documents is fairly easy. You start with the Choose File button and select the file you wish to upload. Once the file is selected, you'll click Upload, which will add it to your dashboard. Once your file is on your dashboard, don't forget to press the Submit Documents button. We don't receive it until you've clicked that button, so let's get that Submit button pressed, folks. Next slide, please. The site verification form can be downloaded from the Alameda County Incentive Project landing page, as well as directly from the link embedded on the slides. This form must be submitted within 5 calendar days of submitting your application. Otherwise, your application will be canceled. Also, please remember that the information on the site verification form must match the information on the application. I highly encourage you all to fill out this form as soon as you know you'll submit an application. Ideally, well before beginning your application, so it can be submitted at the same time as your application. If you have your site verification form filled out ahead of time, you can even use the information on the form to fill out your application. By doing this, you'll make sure the information on both forms matches, and you'll also have it submitted early, and you'll get even closer to reserving funds for your installation. It's a win-win-win situation. Next slide, please. After submittal of your site verification form, the Center for Sustainable Energy will review your application to confirm that all the eligibility requirements are being met. This includes applicant eligibility, site eligibility, and equipment eligibility. Once review is complete and an application meets all eligibility requirements, the Center for Sustainable Energy will move the application to the funds reserved stage, after which applicants will have 15 months to complete installation. Applicants should receive notification of this date through the applicant dashboard and email. However, applicants only have 60 days after their funds reserved date to submit their evidence of permit submittal or utility design submittal. Next slide, please. So this set of documents is due 60 calendar days after the date of your funds that your funds are reserved. To satisfy this requirement, applicants could submit either evidence of permit application submittal or evidence of utility service design submittal. For applicants going the permit route, this means submitting a copy of the permit application, a copy of the permit plan set, meaning the full set of plans required to support the permit application, and a copy of the payment receipt for permit application submittal, indicating that it has been accepted. Many applicants fail to provide this receipt with their permit application and plan set, so to avoid delays in the rebate process, please make sure to either provide the receipt or some proof that the jurisdiction does not charge an application or plan check fee. For applicants going the utility service design route, this means submitting a copy of the utility service design application, the full plan set submitted with the utility service design application, and a copy of the payment receipt for the application submittal. Next slide, please. In step 5, applicants must upload all remaining documents. Remember that the system requires you to upload documents to your dashboard before submission to CSE, meaning that they are two separate actions. This is designed to help applicants prepare their full submission before submitting. However, this does require applicants to remember to press Submit after all documents have been uploaded. So please don't forget to press that Submit button. Step 6 is an optional step only available to DC fast charger and combination applications. This step allows applicants to request a milestone payment of up to 60% of the reserved rebate amount, up to 8 months after the funds reserved date. The milestone payment is intended to provide the applicant with a portion of the actual design and permitting project costs during a build-out and mitigate some of the high upfront costs for DCFC installations. Finally, once the Center for Sustainable Energy has reviewed the documents from your final submission, applicants may receive the final payment. Next slide, please. The job site installation form must be submitted prior to receiving a milestone payment and/or a final payment, as it is an attestation that the project's EVITP requirements have been met. It can be downloaded from the Alameda County Incentive Project landing page, as well as directly from the link embedded on this slide. Next slide, please. The signed application form is another form that is required before receiving any payment. It is here on the signed application form that applicants will need to indicate how many CCS connectors and how many CHAdeMO connectors they plan to install. Additionally, applicants will once again attest that their installations will meet the DC fast charger connector site requirements. Applicants only installing level 2 chargers will still have to submit a signed application form prior to receiving any payment. The signed application form is sent to the application manager once the documents submitted as evidence of permit or utility submittal have been approved. Next slide, please. So the last form I'll talk about is the installation data form. This is a required form that helps CSE determine your total project costs and final rebate amount. You can access this form at any time once funds have been reserved for your application, so I highly encourage you to fill out this form as you incur costs and make progress on your installation. Next slide, please. Now we will look at the level 2 only rebate process. It is very similar to the one we just went over, with a few notable exceptions. Step 1 is the same. You apply online and within 5 days provide the site verification form to avoid auto cancellation. Step 2 is also the same. CSE performs the initial verification to confirm that all eligibility requirements are being met. After initial verification, the application moves to the funds reserved stage, after which Level 2 applications have 9 months to complete installation, so less time than the DC fast charger and combination applications. 60 days from the funds reserved date, applicants must submit evidence of permit submittal or utility design submittal, which remains the same as DC fast charger applications and combination applications. Step 5 again remains the same. Upload and then submit the final documentation. Please remember to press submit once all documents have been uploaded. For step 6, note that there is not an option to receive a milestone payment, another notable difference from DC fast charger and combination applications. Instead, the application goes straight to final payment once the Center for Sustainable Energy has reviewed the documents from the final submission. Next slide, please. Here is a list of all the documents that are required to receive your final payment. You can find this list in the implementation manual or on this slide once we distribute them to attendees after the webinar and post them to the CEC docket. I would also encourage you all to review the sample supporting documents resource if you have any questions or doubts about the types of documents we accept for each requirement. Next slide, please. You're also free to reach out to our technical assistance team if you have any questions about the application process, rebate process, required documents, or even more technical questions regarding your installation. We're here to help. Visit our webpage linked on this slide, or head to CALeVIP.org and browse through our resources tab. You can also reach us through the email ebexpert@energycenter.org. We look forward to working with y'all. Next slide, please. Finally, if you are having issues connecting with EV charging station installers, EVITP certified electricians, network providers, or other services you might need for your installation, please check out our CALeVIP Connects website, linked below. Or if you're interested in being listed on Connects, also head over to our website and submit a request to be added. Inquiries go directly to your inbox, creating a direct connection between you and the applicant or site host. Whether or not you file a CALeVIP application or receive CALeVIP funds, we hope that this is a meaningful tool for all of you to ensure your installations are a success. Next slide, please. Okay, so a few key takeaways from today's webinar. Installations will open in 15 days to eligible properties in Alameda County. All applicants should complete their site verification form before applying and use it to help fill out your applications so that it's ready to submit well in advance of the 5-day deadline and all information matches. The use of Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Training Program, or EVITP, certified electricians, consistent with Public Utilities Code Section 740.20, will be required for all Alameda County Incentive Project applications. So please keep that in mind as you are planning your projects. And please make use of our Connects tool if you're having issues connecting with an EVITP certified electrician near you. And a bonus key takeaway, please review the Alameda County eligible equipment list well before launch day. If you are planning on installing DC fast chargers, have a plan for what chargers you want to select in your application, as there will not be an other or undecided option for DC fast chargers. Next slide, please. After this webinar, we encourage you to stay connected with Cali VIP. Linked here is the California Energy Commission docket for Cali VIP 17-EVI-01. On that docket, you can submit comments anytime, view all submitted comments, download past presentations, and this presentation as well. You can also sign up for the Cali VIP email listserv by going to calivip.org and scrolling to the bottom and filling in your information in the Stay Up to Date section. With that, I'll turn it back to Amy, who will moderate the Q&A session this morning. Amy?
Thank you, Fidel, for the presentation. We're going to use our remaining time for a Q&A session, so feel free to add questions that you have now. I will direct them to one of our panelists, and please give me just a moment to organize the questions. Next slide, please, Jane. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. First question is for you, Fidel. Are Alameda municipal power customers eligible?
Yes, all sites within Alameda County are eligible as long as they're one of our qualified site types. However, they would not be eligible for ebce funding, which is that separate $2 million and approximately $700,000 that is reserved for level 2 funding.
Thank you. Fidel, this one's for you as well. If I recently installed a level 2 charger, can we get a rebate?
If your installation is already complete, then that answer is no. However, if you've simply incurred some costs due to design or permitting, then yes, you're still eligible for rebates from Cali VIP.
Thank you. Brian, I own a business in San Luis Obispo. When will our county have this opportunity?
Sure. So Cali VIP actually launched a project called the South Central Coast Project in August, early August, that covered San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. So unfortunately, you're a little bit behind track, but we always encourage you to submit an application still while fast chargers are heavily over subscribed in that county. Level 2 is also oversubscribed, but we always encourage to submit an application in case there's cancellations or additional funding becomes available later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Fidel, what must the site type selection be for curbside installations? And for the installation address, how should curbside installations be represented?
So for curbside installations, I believe I'll have to confirm this, but I believe the selection is just curbside for site type. And for the installation address, you should select the address that is closest to the site or the location of the charger.
Thank you. And I'll just add to that quickly. Curbside installations are eligible for any of the listed eligible site types. So you'll select whatever is nearby your site type. And then, like Fidel said, the installation address is whatever's closest. Fidel, can you, oh, sorry, we already answered that one. What if the make and model is unknown at the time of application submittal?
So for level 2, we do have an other option where you can select other and then select a number of connectors. However, for DC fast chargers, our active connector field auto-populates, so that does not make it possible for you to select how many active connectors you would like to install. So I would simply recommend that you install or that you select a similar DC fast charger as to what you are expecting to install. And while it's not guaranteed that the charger you are planning to install, it at least gives us an idea of your general site plans and reserve the appropriate amount of funds for you.
Thanks. Brian, can you please confirm how simultaneous DC fast chargers are funded? Is funding based on the guaranteed max output of each active connector?
Correct, and maybe Fidel can expand on it, but say you have a 100 kW overall charger that can simultaneously charge 2 vehicles. While if one connector is only being used, you're going to be giving out that 100 kW. The max at any time is if both are being used, that's considered 2 at 50 kW. And so you'd be eligible for 2 rebates at the lower rebate level. If your charger is a 300 or a 250 kW charger, that means whatever's being split by those active connector, we need to know what at the max of both connectors being used, if they're both able to be above 100 kW, then you'd be getting 2 higher rebates. But if both are below 100 kW, you would get 2 of the smaller rebates.
Yeah, and I'll quickly add to that we do have a model that is 150 kW max output, but it actually splits it between 2 active connectors, and one provides 100 and the other provides 50. So in that scenario, one is eligible for one 100 kW rebate and the other is eligible for one 50 kW rebate. So it's at the active connector level and the guaranteed max output of the active connectors.
Yeah, so I'd just say the takeaway is really talk with your companies that you're looking at purchasing these chargers from and really understand if it is a simultaneous charger, understand its capabilities ahead of time.
Yeah, and I would also encourage you to review the eligible equipment list for Alameda County, as we do list out the guaranteed max outputs for each of the DC fast chargers and specifically the connector configurations for each one.
Thank you both. Fidel, if we are replacing existing chargers, are those eligible for rebates or are there conditions for replacing certain types of chargers?
Yes, so the replacement of chargers is mainly for chargers that are non-networked or older paddle style chargers. Maybe Brian has more to add, but we don't want to be replacing a perfectly good level 2 charger that is networked. Even if the replacement is for a DC fast charger, we'd rather install a whole new DC fast charger and ensure we're keeping the accessibility of the level 2.
Correct, and the implementation manual lists and discuss replacements and the definitions of what's eligible on page 30 of the implementation manual you can download. So as Fidel stated, level 2 is really for non-networked or inductive paddle style chargers. For fast chargers, it's for non-networked or for chargers only capable of up to 40 kW, or chargers that are only single connector. So it means they maybe are only CHAdeMO or they're only CCS, and you're going to update them to a new charger. But if it's a 50 kW charger, it's not going to be eligible if it already has both connectors.
Thanks. Fidel, is a religious place of worship eligible for DCFC funding?
That is a good question. I believe the answer is yes, but I'll need to double check that before saying that definitively.
Thank you. Brian, does this program cover heavy-duty electric trucks?
So I'd say it's a gray area. So the primary purpose of Cali VIP is to serve light duty vehicle charging and infrastructure. This is again funded by the the primary funding is from the Clean Transportation Program at the Commission, and our funding is designated to light duty vehicle charging. So while it needs to serve this as a primary purpose, we do encourage dual purpose. So for level 2 charges, fleets are eligible, but the primary use should be light duty fleet or light duty vehicles. But if you can, co-benefit medium or heavy duty, that's fine. Fast chargers, same thing, that this needs to be available to the general public. It's not going to be for workplace or heavy duty fleets. But if you design a fast charger, a 300 kW or whatever, that's capable of benefiting both and it's not restricting, that's completely fine.
Thank you. Fidel, if we apply for a DC fast charger, can we modify that to a level 2 if needed, and vice versa?
So typically we accept the swapping out of chargers for similar level chargers. That's something we'd have to look at it on a case-by-case basis, and depending on available funding and wait lists, that may be accommodated, but wouldn't be guaranteed. So I would really encourage you to figure out at least which type of charging you're most interested in, and apply for the relevant amounts.
Thank you. And Fidel, are parking garage facilities an approved business site location?
Yes, parking garage facilities are in our eligible site types for DCFCs, so they would be eligible for funding.
Yeah, and I can just add again that any of these questions around real eligibility, go again to the implementation manual. On pages 11 and 12, we discuss eligible site types for level 2 and fast chargers. So to that previous question about churches or places of worship, that is not listed as eligible for fast chargers. Level 2 would be eligible.
Thank you. Fidel, if we submit for multiple projects at different sites and get to funds reserved, will we only be able to receive rebate funds after the first project is complete, or one project at a time? If so, how does this affect the timeline for installation?
Yes, so if the applications are for different sites, then there wouldn't be a limit besides the rebate cap limit, the tin cap of 992,000. So you'd be able to obtain funds reserved status for charger applications adding up to 992,000. That said, if you are planning to install multiple sites or multiple installations within one site, and you are a large site, which we generally define that as larger than 5 acres, that can also be accommodated, but that's determined a bit more on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. Brian, are there staggering arguments for the landlord owning or operating the EV chargers versus delegating to a third-party operator?
I'd say it's just personal preference. Every charging company, manufacturer, network provider, they're all going to have different business models available to the business owners. And so it's really just going to be a personal preference of, do you want to be fully responsible for maintenance and etc., which again, you can buy maintenance plans, warranties, extended warranties, etc. Do you want to have full control? Do you want to collect the revenue? Do you just want to offer a resource or benefit to your staff or customers and just be a host and be kind of hands off? So there is no right answer here. It's really just what's that personal preference and the best situation for your business. And exploring again with Cali VIP Connects, all these manufacturer network providers have many different business models that can be tailored to what you really are looking for.
Thank you. Fidel, is a PG&E account number needed in the application process?
It's not required to have a PG&E account number. So for example, if you're a Alameda municipal customer, you wouldn't have a PG&E number, but you'd still be eligible for rebates. That PG&E number is primarily to help us identify and verify EBCE customers.
Thank you. And also you, Fidel, when will a shorter than 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. time frame be released for launch?
So that should be announced probably in the coming week, so that you are prepared and know when to be at the ready.
Yes, and that will be available on the project landing page in a banner. Brian, when can I start construction and still qualify for funding?
Sure. So we allow all costs to be incurred on a project on the date of the landing page being posted, which I will need to defer to my colleagues at CSE to confirm that date, but it also should be listed in the implementation manual.
Yes, that date is October 1st.
Thank you. Again, I'd note that you can incur those costs at your own risk. There's no guarantee, again, that your application will move to a funds reserve status, as, again, this is first come, first serve, but you're allowed to incur those costs at your risk.
Thanks. Fidel, can we modify the amount of connectors planned at a site after the application submittal?
Yes, but typically we can only adjust them down. So if you're planning to install the full 10 and then at some point realize you can only or you only want to install say 8 or 7, we can accommodate that. But however, because we do reach fully subscribed status fairly quickly, and the funds are typically not just sitting there waiting for someone to pick up an additional couple of ports. That's not going to be possible to accommodate trying to add more.
And I'll add to that again that, I say this almost in every webinar we do for every project, but Cali VIP was designed again to be a quick installation and application process and management. We're looking for applicants that are ready to go, and that's kind of shown now with our more recent projects having our 60-day checkpoint for the permit or utility design. And so we need applicants, or would love applicants really, to be at their best possible stance when they're applying, because again, changes to your equipment is not going to really be an excuse for extensions. We're looking for expedited chargers, installations, and projects that are really as best defined and ready to go. While we can accommodate minor changes, we're always oversubscribed, and we'd love to have applications just continue to move forward as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Fidel, will we be required at time of application submittal to have the utility service provider and utility account number?
So again, you will only require the number for EBCE customers. If you're not an EBCE customer, that doesn't apply to you. However, not supplying the number doesn't mean you can't participate. It just means that the funds that are provided by EBCE can't be dispersed to you.
Thank you. And I'll add to that, if you are a PG&E customer, please have your utility account number ready. We're hoping to just have everyone's account number input so that we can determine whether or not you're an EBCE customer. Fidel, when will cities for Southern California have an incentive project pre-launch webinar?
I'm actually not sure of the exact date. I believe it'll be early next year. But Amy, do you have any additional info to add to that?
Yeah, we don't have a set project launch date yet, but as soon as we have that, we'll set up both webinars.
Yeah, and to expand, that project is slated for late Q1 2022. The landing page typically goes up 2 months before with its full requirements, and a pre-launch marketing webinar like ours today is typically 2 weeks before. So we still have a few months likely before that's happening.
Thank you, Brian. Brian, will there be a phase 2 of the Alameda County Incentive Program?
So at this time, there's only a single fiscal year of funding contributions from ourselves and our partner, EBCE. So it's not planned for phase 2 at this time, but we never know what the future holds. And so, as we always say, we encourage applications to continue to come in. So if additional funds do come available through any sources, we have a wait list ready to go.
Thank you. All right, I'm not seeing any further questions. Feel free to submit more. If you have further questions after the webinar, feel free to reach out to us at our email and submit comments to the CEC docket. We'd like to thank you all for joining us today. Do not hesitate to reach out to us, and we look forward to hearing from everyone and look forward to the application day on December 1st. So thanks all. Jane, could you click to the next slide, please? Here are a few more resources for everyone. Thanks again, everyone.